Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining this session. This is the fifth session in a row, 5 days. Um, I think we will need another session tomorrow to finish. So welcome and thank you those of you who are watching live as well as those of you who will be watching later on. Today I'm not feeling so well. I've got a little bit of a health issue. So please tolerate my sniffing and my maybe sneezing at times. And I might even have to wear those at one point. These help me. I've got rhinitis and sometimes it gets triggered with light and this blocks a bit of the blue light. So it helps me. So I'm sorry if I have to put these on. So we will begin with the Mangala Charana prayer. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Nadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragunantam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Site Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakarpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharin Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadishatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's been a bit hectic these past days to try to keep up the pace of reading every day, because I also give Bhagavatam class in the morning and kids class in early afternoon. So the health is taking a hit. Alright, so yesterday we read a lot about the works, the written works of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Hot water always helps. Actually, rhinitis is a problem with the digestive system. When there's not enough heat in the digestive system, these things occur, itchiness of the eyes, some snot, sneezing, like that. So digestive system has to be strong. Alright, I think I'll wear those glasses to start with, so excuse me for this. Okay, so yesterday we read about how Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote so many different types of works. He really started to preach a lot, and how he traveled. He went to Vrindavan. He got rid of some dacoits that were there, that were stealing, possessions from the pilgrims. And he got rid of them. He cleaned up those bandits of Vrindavan. He preached a lot. He opened more than 500 namahats throughout his whole life. A namahat is a place where devotees gather to chant the holy name, discuss Krishna Katha, like that. It's not necessarily a temple. It can be someone's house or some other place like that. So, yes. So that's it. And today we will start from a mighty pen. So I believe, again, we will discuss some of the works that he's done, and in this way we'll progress. So now, as you can see, 1892, I think this is where we are now in his life, which means about 54 years old, if I'm not mistaken. 60 plus 30, yeah, about 54 years old or plus, like that. So this is the book here, the 7 Gosvāmī. I will read the prayer of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidanandamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Satchidananda Bhaktivinod, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa. Jai Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. For those of you who have just joined, why I'm wearing glasses is because I'm feeling a bit of a health issue, and this helps me to not feel the itchiness of the eyes. Okay, we begin. A mighty pen. During the time of his 2-year preaching furlough, yes, because he got 2 years off of his duties, his work duties, court duties, so 2 years of free time to fully preach. The Thakura produced another literature outpouring. In 1892, he published short excerpts in pamphlet form of an earlier published work called Vaishnava Siddhanta Mala. The pamphlets were based mainly on the portion of the book which deals with the glories of the holy name. And they were given titles like Shriharinam, Shrinam, Shrinam Mahima, Shrinam Prachar, and Shrinam Tadva. So all based on her previous work. These were distributed to the people as part of the Thakura's Namahat program and were very well received. Also in 1892, the Thakura published a book called Shriman Mahaprabhu's Shiksha, a book of 11 chapters, summarizing Lord Chaitanya's philosophy in 10 major categories. The first chapter presented the 10 categories, and the succeeding 10 discussed each category individually. There are profuse Sanskrit quotation to substantiate each point, as well as Bengali prose translations and explanations. So most of his work was written in Bengali, but I believe almost all of them that we have our hands on must have been translated by now in English. But in 1893, the real deluge occurred. He wrote Tadva Viveka, or Satchid Ananda Nubhuti. That Tadva Viveka is a very famous work of his, which was a presentation of the teachings of the greatest Vaishnava Acharyas in relation to the ideas of famous Western and Oriental philosophers. The book comprised 48 Sanskrit verses with detailed Bengali commentary on each verse. Then came Sharanagati, Gita Mala, and Gitavali, 3 small songbooks which perfectly expressed in simple Bengali the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and the lofty realizations and sentiments of a self-realized soul. He wrote a Sanskrit poem about Lord Chaitanya called Shri Gautrama Chandra Bhajanopadesha. 2 more songbooks entitled Baula Sangita and Dalaler Gita, and a booklet in English entitled Nama Bhajana, about the holy name of Krishna. So this Baula Sangita, he smashes this Baula Sahaja caste, Sahaja, called the Baula, so many deviations, he smashes them. And the Dalaler Gita is a very famous song also, but it seems to be part of a song book who has the same name. He also wrote a monumental novel called Jaiva Dharma, which covered the entire spectrum of Gaudiya Vaishnava, though and answered almost every conceivable question that an inquisitive and intelligent soul could ever think to ask. He also wrote Tattva Sutram, a book of Sanskrit aphorism with Sanskrit explanations and Bengali commentary. He thus produced 10 significant works, one of them of major proportions, all in 1 year. Wow. And meanwhile, he was lecturing, chanting, and preaching to whomever he met. We can begin to understand from all this holy activity what Gaur Shakti Svarupa really means. He truly was the embodiment of the transcendental energy of Lord Chaitanya. For these are not the activities of anyone but an empowered associate of the Lord. 10 books while going around lecturing, chanting, preaching, opening Namahat in 1 year. Similarly, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada presented 17 volumes of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with full commentary in English in 18 months, while spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world, personally describing such work as materially impossible. His immense outpouring can be compared favorably to Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. One empowered soul can only be compared favorably with another. By objective examination, a reasonable person can understand that such activities are superhuman and miraculous. Only when one is purely instrumental in Krishna's hands can such perfect literature be composed in an unbroken flow of pure realization. To get some idea of the flavor of his writings during this period, we turn to the song Daladel Gita, the Song of the Broker, and the English essay, Nama Bhajana, in which he glorifies the holy name as was his constant practice in preaching to the masses. He was always either chanting the holy name or speaking on the chanting of the holy name. And we get some clear idea of the level of inspiration and spiritual enthusiasm he was experiencing during this period, from the moving poetic excerpts which follow. So this is Daladel Gita. Very beautiful song. Borosuker ka borgai, borosuker ka borgai, Surabi kunjete name hat kuleche, kodanitai, 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 boromojar katatai, boromojar katatai. Very nice bhajan. I am singing the news of the greatest happy tidings. At the place known as Surabhi Kunja in Srinavadvip, a marketplace of the holy name has now been opened, and Lord Nityananda himself is the proprietor in chief. Such wonderful things are going on in that blissful marketplace. Shri Nityananda Prabhu is selling the pure, unadulterated holy name wholesale, merely for the price of one's faith. Seeing the assembly of devotees eagerly waiting to purchase the name, Lord Nityananda examines them all, one by one, to test the degree of their receptivity. And then he sells them the name individually by bargaining for his price accordingly. Oh brother, my dear friend, if you really want to purchase this pure holy name, then come. Just come with me, for I am now going to meet with that very same Nityananda Mahajan. Thus you will finally be able to purchase the pure holy name. I will also take my due commission, and in this way all three of us will fulfill our desires. Shri Nityananda Prabhu is so incredibly merciful, taking only one's faith in the holy name. He bestows the topmost divine bliss in exchange. The very second that Nitai sees a tear welling in someone's eye upon chanting the name of Gaura, he instantly gives his support to that person. Indeed, he bestows all divine opulences upon him. Just one moment. I'm just trying to see if I can lower down the blue light on the display. Anyway. Okay. Where were we? Yes, here. He gives that person genuine realization of the pure teachings of Sri Krishna, as found in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. While giving all this inconceivable mercy, he never cares in the least for one's position in relation to caste, material wealth, mundane knowledge, or physical ability. Now, dear brothers, just reject the illusory network of Maya's entangling snares. If you are a householder, then just remain at your home. If you are renounced, then just live peacefully in the forest. Either way, you will experience no more misery. Now there is no more fear of the terrible age of quarrel. For the most merciful Lord Nityananda gives the holy name to anyone and everyone, even the lowest of men. Bhaktivinoda Laldi calls out and advises all, except for the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, there is no other shelter. From Nama Bhajana. So now is the first work that was spoken about. Now we come to Nama Bhajana, the quotation, or an excerpt, I mean to say. If by discarding the company of asat, or dissonant fellows, asat literally means non-existence. Hence, those who are unusually attached to the fair sex and those who are non-devotees of Krishna, both are called asat, for things other than Krishna are transitory. One embraces the company of the good, or sat, opposite of asat. He long gains a firm reliance, and then, through the stages of nishta, etc., reaches the ladder of bhava. Those whose hearts are crooked will, beyond any doubt, run towards to hell. The fortunate ones who earnestly long to ascend the terrace of Prem do sincerely and incessantly chant the name of Krishna in the company of sadhus. They do not have any appetite for any other feature of devotion. When, in a short time, by the grace of Nama, the heart becomes closely attentive, the fruit of religious forbearance, control over sensual appetites, religious observance, withholding the breath by way of religious austerity, abstract religious contemplation, steady abstraction of the mind, and indifference to external impressions are very easily gained without paying the least heed to all these. Nama alone is a complete suspension of the fleeting mental operations. The more the heart is pellucid maybe means like translucid, pellucid. I don't know if it's selected it properly or not, but I cannot find. The more diverse pastimes of the spiritual kingdom play in it. The flow of the milk of this felicity is so very fast running that no other means can give even the smallest drop of it. Jivas have no other wished for wealth than the grace of Krishna. Nama is spiritual, wisdom, vows, meditation, abnegation, mental quietness, virtue, contrivance. None of these can ever equal Nama. Know it for certain that Nama is the highest salvation. Nama is the highest end. Nama is the noblest final beatitude. Nama is eternally existing. Nama alone is the supremest devotion. Nama is the highest intellect. Nama is the best priti, affection, and Nama alone is the brightest remembrance. Nama is the seed and Nama is the fruit to jivas. Nama is their Lord and Nama alone is the supremest object of their worship. Nama is their best preceptor. So I think this verse in Sanskrit is very famous. It was shared many times, The Vedas have described the spirituality of the name of Krishna to be the highest truth. O Lord, reasonably we have judged Thy name to be higher than the highest, and so do we chant Thy Nama. Nama Bhajan is not bound by any rule. Nama is beyond all virtuous acts. He is the spiritual. He is virility and luster in a person. All the Vedas have been manifested from this Nama. Nama is bliss. Nama is Ananda. We can excellently repeatedly we fall prostrate at those. Thy lotus feet and anoint the body with the pollen thereof, in order to lead the soul to its highest stage. Devotees mutually discuss on Nama and sing his glories. And then it is said also in 10 and 11, they preach among themselves, constantly enlightening one another. They believe Thy name to be Chaitanya in person, and always sing and hear kirtan, which is identical with Thy Nama, name. They are purified by it. Nama alone is Sat, or ever existing. The essence of the Vedas is Nama, the absolute truth whose form is Satchidananda, Sat, ever existing, Chit, all-knowing, and Ananda, all bliss, O Vishnu. It is only by the grace of Thy name that we are capable of offering hymns to Thee. So we should adore and pray to Thy name alone, Nama alone. In 1893, in the midst of his expensive preaching activity, the Thakura also had the good fortune of getting the association of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, who accompanied by many Vaishnavas came to Shimayapur on pilgrimage and visited the Thakura at Kotruma. So, only an empowered Acharya can praise the holy name like that. If we were to try to praise the holy name, it would be artificial, right? At least myself, definitely. I would be like somehow faking it. We cannot give like lectures on how to chant properly or what. We can only quote from the Acharya or say what the Acharya have spoken about the holy name. I have to wear those glasses again. My eyes are quite itchy. Sorry. Retirement and expansion of preaching. In mid-1893, the Thakura was requested to resume his duties by Sir Henry Cotton, Chief Secretary of the Government of Bengal. So, by that time now, he's 55 years old. Srila Bhaktivinoda wanted to resume his services in Krishnanagar, but he was asked to go to Sasaram, where there were riots between Hindus and Muslims. He recalls, there was a serious dispute between the Hindus and Muslims over cow slaughter. There had been very good relations between the Hindus and Muslims for many a year, but because of cow slaughter, their good relations had ended. The feelings of hostility were mutual, and there was constant fighting between them. In the town of Sasaram, there were many alleys and lanes, and Muslims and Hindus lived cheek by jowl. Prabhupada describes this many times. The Muslims and Hindus, the house was like, you could open your window and see in the Muslim's house and vice versa. Because of this, there were plenty of opportunity for disputes. Fighting would develop daily. A certain Vaishnava sannyasi bought a small piece of land facing my court office, and he endeavored to build a temple there. The Muslims insisted that the temple could not be built. The sannyasi spoke to me about the matter, and I spoke to the Muslim Serestadara, so as to know the thought of the local Muslims on this matter. The sannyasi did not wait for the result of the talks, and he began to build the temple anyway. That particular day I was in Nasaringanga. Muslims went to the plot of land with sticks and swords to fight. The leaders among the Muslims sent a telegram to the government, and the commissioner was informed that the sannyasi was building the temple over a Muslim tomb, and that it was being done with the connivance of Hindu officers. Many letters were exchanged concerning this matter. Being a Hindu officer, it was difficult for me to stay in Sasaram and remain impartial. I made many attempts to get away from Sasaram. My superior officers gave much help to me, and the government secretaries informed me that there would be a transfer elsewhere at a suitable time. So he went away from the trouble of Hindu-Muslim fight. In the meantime, because the thing you see, this Hindu-Muslim fight, unless they become Vaishnavas, was going to be the actual full benefit of it. Of course, if there's some inequalities and all, we can try to see and explain, but ultimately, unless they're Vaishnavas, his work of preaching and having people chant the Hare Krishna is much, 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 much more important. In the meantime, the Thakura was requested to go to Goyat as a matter of urgency. I came to know that in Goyat there was an excellent bull that belonged to a Brahmana. The Brahmana went to Purushottama, Puri, but he did not take the bull. Upon returning, he searched for the bull, and when he could not find it, he concluded that the local butchers had killed and eaten it. The Brahmana challenged the Muslim butchers, and they replied, "What of your bull? In the future, we will kill 5 cows in front of everyone on market day. What will the Hindus be able to do when they see this?" Hearing this utterance, the Brahmana was enraged and informed all the Hindus. He also wrote to the respectable citizens of the town in order to put an end to the cow killing. You can see the very demonic mentality that some of these Muslims have. On the market day, almost 4,000 Hindus from all over the region and beyond, and carrying missiles and swords, came to the house of the butcher, who fled. They made a slight disturbance but did not see the men, and therefore dispersed. By the afternoon, the Muslim group had grown, and taking up guns and swords, some of them injured some Hindus. The injured persons had to be sent to the hospital. After some delay, the police came, but they were not able to do anything. Finally, they saw the Muslims creating a disturbance, but because the fight was not started by the Muslims, but rather was started by the Hindus were considered to be at fault. So, they considered the fight starting from the point of the humans doing something to other humans. But the Muslims killing the bull and saying that they're going to kill 5 cows and all that doesn't count. After carefully questioning witnesses from both sides, I gave 2-year prison sentences to a few Hindu men. Then, after examining the witnesses against the Muslims, I gave 2-year prison sentences to some of them. They appealed to the High Court against my decision in these 2 trials, but my decision was upheld. Finally, the Thakura wrote to Sir Henry Cotton, and he received a transfer to Nadia. He comments, "The days of my trouble were over. In the month of October, I came to Calcutta from Sasaram. The Thakura's workload was somewhat reduced, and he again contemplated this retirement longingly." You see, he was seeing that as trouble, having to deal with this Hindu-Muslim thing. Of course, I mean, Hindus are definitely more pious. They want to go Rakshya, protect the cow. The year was 1894. In Krishna Nagar, and grand meeting of the Shri Navadvip Dham Pracharini Sabha was held, and many scholarly men attended. After much discussion, it was decided that deities must be established at the Yoga Pita, birth site of Lord Gauranga, in October of 1894, at the age of 56. The Thakura decided to retire from government service against the protestations of government authorities and his family. Just see. He tried to stop work much earlier than that. I don't recall the year, but yesterday we read that he already wanted to retire around the age of 50, 49, 50, like that. Now he's 56. That means because of the pressure of the government, they kept him 6 years. And now, and not only government, his own family also. You see, materially speaking, you can never satisfy someone with your service. It's not possible. There will never be enough you can do. They will always want you to do more and more and more and more and more. He felt that the greater work of preaching the glories of the holy name was urgent, and that his government services was a hindrance. He retired to Surabhikunja in Godrumadvip, where he engaged himself fully in preaching, chanting, and writing. He revised many of his previous writings, perfecting and refining them. No longer was he distracted by mundane duties. So, wow, 1990, at the age of 56, he retired. Was he Surabhikunja, Godrumadvip? Was he with his family? It seems like he wasn't. On December 6, 1894, an article appeared in Amrita Bazar Patrika that describes how, just after the Thakura's retirement from government service, he began going from door to door in Calcutta, begging donations for Lord Chaitanya's temple in Mayapur, in a spirit of perfect humility. That's the famous pastime of his, that he begged 1 rupee from each inhabitant of Navadvip, Mayapur. Babu Kedar Nath Dutt, the distinguished deputy magistrate, who has just retired from the service, is one of the most active members. Indeed, Babu Kedar Nath has been deputed by the committee to raise subscription in Calcutta and elsewhere, and is determined to go from house to house, if necessary, and beg a rupee from each Hindu gentleman for the noble purpose. If Babu Kedar Nath Dutt therefore really sticks to his resolution of going round with a bag in hand, we hope no Hindu gentleman whose house may be honored by the presence of such a devout bhakta as Babu Kedar Nath will send him away without contributing his mite, however humble it may be, to the Gaur Vishnupriya Temple Fund. Gaur Vishnupriya. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur thus honored the houses of many persons, even persons who had formerly been opposed to him for one reason or another. His efforts served as inspiration for many other workers, and before long sufficient funds had been taken up to erect a temple in Mayapur. While the foundation of the temple was being dug, a deity of Adhokshaja Vishnu was found. Oh, wow. So right on the spot where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born, they found this deity of Adhokshaja Vishnu. By referring to the Gaudiya Vaishnava scriptures, the Thakura determined that this deity was the very deity worshipped by Ond and Sri Jagannath Mishra. Oh, that's how they found. So I guess it must be there in Mayapur somewhere. The father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this Adhokshaja deity must still be there, I guess. Maybe you can put in the comment if any of you has seen that deity. This discovery confirmed the authenticity of the site from yet another point of view, archaeological. Yeah. On March 21st, 1895, on Guru Purnima, the anniversary of Sri Gauranga's birth, an enormous installation ceremony and Sankirtana festival was held. So 1895 Gaur Purnim. And Prabhupada is born in 1896, just one year after. Thousands of visitors attended, and the festival was compared by many participants to the famous Keturi festival of Nartam Das Thakur, which were organized 450 years ago to unite all the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur recalls, there was an enormous Sri Murti installation festival and uncountable participants attended. There was Manohara Sari Kirtan and Nama Sankirtan, all with great bliss. Envy had previously arisen from the inhabitants of present-day Navadvip over the finding of old Navadvip. There had been some talk and a storm of abusive words for the worshippers of Gauranga. But for those who have offered their lives to the lotus feet of Gauranga, why would they be intimidated by the talk of wicked people? Not listening to the talk of the worldly minded and envious, the devotees arranged to build a temple and worship the Lord. The Thakura installed deities of Lord Chaitanya and his consort, Shrimati Vishnupriya, and everything was conducted with great pomp. The birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was officially commemorated, and its true identity and importance was dramatically revealed to thousands of people. Thousands of Vaishnavas from all parts of India were present and took part in the ecstatic chanting, dancing and feasting. Most of the learned Panditas of Navadvip, after hearing the exhaustive evidence uncovered by the Thakura, finally admitted that this was indeed the place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. After this momentous celebration, the Thakura traveled to Tripura, a mountainous state where Virachandra Deva Maharaj, who was devoted to Lord Vishnu, was king. The Thakura traveled there at the king's invitation in July of 1896, and for 4 days he preached about the glories of the holy name to the people there. On the first day, he spoke about the eternal principles of devotion and the spiritual form of the holy name of Krishna. His lecture was filled with deep philosophical analysis and many quotations from the Vedic scriptures, unknown even to the many Panditas and learned gentlemen in the attendance. Upon hearing his talk, they became stunned with amazement at the erudition and deep realizations of the liberated Paramahamsa. Many were able to grasp for the first time the transcendent nature of pure devotional service and the chanting of the holy names. For the next 2 days, now mind you, save and except of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this time in India, there seem to be no other devotee who is preaching, There were some other Mahabhagavata that were there. Of course, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was there, he had his own group, but like traveling to different places like that and try to spread the holy name around, he was the only one, it seems so. For the next 2 days, the Thakura enlivened both the royal family and the general public by continuously speaking on Lord Chaitanya's sublime pastimes. Returning from Tripura to his work with the Namahat in Godrumadvip, the Thakura toured all the villages in the vicinity of Kalkara and Kumarhat, chanting the holy name and distributing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. From the time of his retirement in 1894 until 1896, there was another incredible outpouring of preaching, writing, and publication work. In 1894, he published Vedarka Didhiti, a Sanskrit commentary on Upanishad, along with a commentary by Baladev Vidyabhushana and other commentaries as well. He also published Tattva Muktavali, or Mayavada Dushani, a book by Madhvacharya refuting the philosophy of Sankaracharya with a prose Bengali translation. Whoa, this is gold. This is good for those of you who preach in India, If you want to be bashing those Mayavad guys, that's, a book to study. I'm just going to note this down, sorry. So by Madhvacharya refuting the philosophy of Sankaracharya. In 1895, the Thakura was in full stride with the publication of his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya, his commentary on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Hari Bhakti Kalpa Latika, a Sanskrit work about pure devotion by an unknown author and edited by the Thakura. Shodasha Grantha, 16 small essays on Vaishnavism by Sri Vallabhacharya. Sri Gauranga Stavakalpataru, a 12-verse poem in Sanskrit form. Raghunath Das Gosvāmī Stavavali Manaha Shantoshini, a Bengali translation of a Sanskrit work by Sri Pradyumna Mishra, Mukunda Mala Stotram by King Kulashekar, who was one of the 12 Alvars of South India, Shri Lakshmi Charita by Gunaraj Khan, the author of Shri Krishna Vijay, 4 Namastotras from the Narada Pancharatra, and Shriman Mahaprabhu Ashtak Kaliya Lila Smaranamangala Stotram, an 11-verse Sanskrit poem on the eightfold daily pastimes of Lord Chaitanya by an unknown author. Good Lord, this is an Acharya. Prabhupada explains in 10.231 Bhagavatam purport that an Acharya has to write books for the future devotees, to help them advance spiritually. And this is exactly what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. I mean, chapters are there just writing of his work, When you need a book to write how many books someone wrote, then he's written so many books. His preaching reaches the Western world. Okay, so this is where 1896. Prabhupada was born in 1896. Yes, Prabhupada said that, that the year he sent this book to McGill University in Montreal, which, by the way, I'm born in Montreal. I've went many times to the McGill University campus. That year he sent that book, Prabhupada was born. It really shows, He sent that book to the West, the Western preaching starts, and the Western preacher emerges. Srila Prabhupada, is born, appeared. 1896 was the momentous year in which the Thakura reached out to the West with his Sri Gauranga Lila Smarana Stotram, a book containing 104 Sanskrit verses and a condensed description of the pastimes and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as found in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavata and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. The book began with a 47-page introduction in English prose entitled Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. This introduction summarizes the contents of the book's Sanskrit verses and is one of the most concisely worded, sublime descriptions of Lord Chaitanya's life and teachings ever written. It is condensed nectar. Accompanying the Sanskrit verses was a Sanskrit commentary entitled Vikashini Tika by the renowned Pandita of Navadvip, Mahopadhyaya Shitikanta Vachaspati. The above-mentioned work was sent to various universities and intellectuals in different parts of the world, and it was, in part, a reply to the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had expressed his regret in not being able to read the Sanskrit of the Thakura's Sri Krishna Samhita. Here was something the Westerners could easily read and profit from, and the book found its way into many of the major educational institutions in both hemispheres. As a matter of fact, it was discovered many years later by one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples in McGill University in Montreal. So he sent it to more than one university. Okay, he sent it to many places, not just universities, but many places. So actually, this was Kirtanananda Swami, if we can say, that found it in McGill University, and he actually stole it. In 1896 was also the year of Srila Prabhupada's birth, which he noted in his dedication to the Thakura of his book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Dedicated to the sacred service of Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who initiated the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in the Western world, McGill University, Canada. In 1896, the year of my birth. By some spiritual coincidence, the two events occurred in the same year, and Srila Prabhupada did not discount, but rather noted the spiritual significance. Furthermore, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had predicted the day that Westerners would also embrace the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in one of his articles written for Sajjana Toshani and published in 1885. He was not only predicted it, but prayed for it and invoked it in the same mood as Advaita Acharya prayed for Lord Chaitanya's descent. So, here's what he wrote. Lord Chaitanya did not advent himself to liberate only a few men of India. Rather, his main objective was to emancipate all living entities of all countries throughout the entire universe and preach the eternal religion. Lord Chaitanya says in the Chaitanya Bhagavata, "In every town, country and village, my name will be sung." There is no doubt that this unquestionable order will come to pass. Very soon, the unparalleled
unparalleled path of Harinam Sankirtan will be propagated all over the world. Already we are seeing the symptoms. Oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up banners, mridangas, and kartas and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. Wow, this is amazing. Eh? You just see what Prabhupada did. English, yes. French, definitely. Russian, a lot. German, yes. American, definitely. And now we see those Western Vaishnavas with mridangas and kartals. And raise kirtana through their streets and towns. When will that day come? Oh, for the day when the fair-skinned men from their side will raise up the chanting of Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandaya Ki Jai, and join with the Bengali devotees. When will that day be? On such a day they will say, "Oh, dear brothers, we have taken shelter of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's love. Kindly embrace us." When will that day come? That day will witness the holy transcendental ecstasy of the Vaishnava Dharma to be the only Dharma, and all the sects and religions will flow like rivers into the ocean of Vaishnava Dharma. When will that day come? Jai! This is what's going to happen. All these so-called nonsense religions of cow killers are all going to flow into Vaishnava Dharma. There's going to be one religion on the earth, Can you imagine? We're definitely seeing now it's kind of getting worse and worse and worse, right? By the day. And there's going to be a huge crash, in my opinion, the Third World War, how Srila Prabhupada says. And after that, I think there's going to be an outpour of thirst for spiritual life, in people's heart. And I think the preaching there is going to spike up like anything. And then he penned another amazing prediction, which can be applied to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but also most certainly to Srila Prabhupada. A personality will soon appear to preach the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and more unrestrictedly over the whole world with his message. Srila Prabhupada naturally credited Srila Saraswati Thakur with this feat, as in his purports to the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the same order as Kardama Muni, about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhaktivinoda also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers to the Lord, he had his child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Maharaj, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciples. On the other hand, the personality who actually repeatedly circled the globe, who moved unrestrictedly over the whole world, was undoubtedly Srila Prabhupada. Both understandings are correct. It was Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, for Prabhupada has stated that he was never separated from the order of his spiritual master for a moment. In the form of his instruction, Srila Saraswati Thakur continued to preach. And most certainly that great figure, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, whose prayers brought such a wealth of association to the impoverished world, in the form of his son, and in the form of his son's foremost disciple, also accompanied them in his shiksha form, thus nourishing the effort at every step. During a videotape conversation with Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles, Vishnu Jan Swami remarked, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said he was leaving this world with his work unfinished. Srila Prabhupada replied, so let us finish it. We are descendants of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It was kept unfinished so that we should get the chance to finish it. That's his mercy. He could have finished immediately. He's Vaishnav. He's all-powerful. And thus there remains a great spiritual legacy of preaching and service for all those who contact the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a disciplic succession of these spiritual titans. In Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts, the Thakura first summarizes the life of the Lord, and he then discusses his precepts. That portion begins as follows. Chaitanya teaches us in the first place that the rational attributes of men are not capable of approaching the divine sphere of spirit. Yukti, as he styles reason, is quite incompetent in such a matter. Ruchi, as he styles the religious sentiment in man, even if in a very small quantity, has the power to comprehend it. It is inspiration which can alone give light to spiritual matters. Inspirations coming down from heaven through purified and blessed souls have exhibited themselves in the form of the Vedas. The Vedas, together with their explanatory notes, the Purans, are therefore the only evidence in matters of spirit and are eternal in nature. Vedic truth should therefore be accepted as the only truth in higher matter. Reason, while sincerely helping the inspired truth, may be accepted as auxiliary evidence. The Vedas teach us, according to Chaitanya, 9 principal doctrines, that is, Hari, the Almighty, is one without a second. You see, this is the first teaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's only one God. There's no two God. And modern-day Hindus say that this is, not all of them, of course, but the grand majority say that this idea that there's only one God is they call it Western idea from the Abrahamic religion. So, Jews, Christians, Muslims, like that. But no, it's not. Definitely not. It's the essence of Vedic literature. He is always vested with infinite power. He is the ocean of rasa, the soul of his vibhinangsha, or separate part. Certain souls are engrossed by prakriti, or illusory energy. Certain souls are released from the grasp of prakriti. All spiritual and material phenomena are Vedavid Prakash of Hari, the Almighty. Bhakti is the only means of attaining the final object of spiritual existence. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanya chasmi tadvata. Prema is Krishna. In Krishna is alone the final object of spiritual existence. With these 9 points introduced, the Thakura elaborates on each point, bearing in mind the various cultural and philosophical prejudices of a Western audience. For example, regarding the realization of God as Krishna, who exhibits his Vrindavan Lila as the first point to be understood, the Thakura naturally realizes the difficulty this will create for the uninitiated. Therefore he writes, the material senses of man cannot approach him. It is the spirit in men which can see him direct and commune with him. The soul fettered in matter has from its own degradation lost its right to see Krishna and his spiritual Leela in the spiritual world. But Krishna, out of his own supreme power and prerogative, may appear with all his Vrindavan Leela before the eyes of all men. The rational man can hardly conceive and believe Krishna and his Leela. As his spiritual essence improves, he sees him and loves him with all his heart. In our small compass, we can hardly treat this subject fully and exhaustively. We therefore leave this point to our readers with these words. Give up the shackles of matter slowly, cultivate your spirit inwards. Give up prejudices which you have acquired from the so-called rational thinkers who deny the existence of spirit. Be humble in yourself and learn to respect those who work towards spiritual attainments. Do these with your heart, mind and strength in the company of spiritual people alone, and you will see Krishna in no time. Krishna is not an imaginary being, nor do you have a right to think that he is a material phenomenon fancied to be the supreme being by the fools. Krishna is not understood by the process of distinguishing the subjective from the objective. That means jnana, understanding soul from matter. Nor he is to be accepted as an imposition on the people set up by designing men. Krishna is eternal, spiritually true, reflected in the human soul when relieved of all pressure of gross matter, and is the subject of love which proceeds from the soul. Accept him as such, and you will see him in your soul's eye. Words fail to describe the transcendental being. The highest, best, and most spiritual ideal of the divinity is in Krishna. To bring arguments against him is simply to deceive oneself and deprive himself of the blessing that God has kept in store for men. Hence, all descriptions of his name, person, attributes, and Leela should be accepted spiritually, giving up the material portion which words must necessarily convey. This kind of words and this kind of, you can see that, it can only be written by someone who's seen the Lord, someone who has seen Krishna face to face. You cannot fake such conviction. The authority, conviction, and straightforwardness with which the Thakura speaks is recognizable, the hallmark of the Paramampara, the cyclic succession of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When speaking of almost inconceivably sublime and rarefied spiritual knowledge and experience, preachers like the Thakura, Srila Sarasvati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada present these topics in a matter-of-fact way, kicking out rationalistic preconceptions and prejudices, and stating what they know beyond doubt to be true. It is clearly desirable to surrender to a spiritual master who has actually seen the truth and can speak of the Absolute with such conclusive authority and conviction. The Thakura, in addressing the third point, i.e. that Lord Hari is the ocean of rasa, urges the reader not to think that the activities of Krishna in the spiritual world have been imagined in the light of our experience of the activities of ordinary persons in the material world. He writes, the Chit Jagat, spiritual universe, is the model of the Mayik Jagat, material universe, but they are not identical. We must guard ourselves against the idea that man has imagined Chit Jagat from an experience of the Mayik Jagat. This idea is pantheistic. So, to think that Krishna's image is a product of our material mind, we imagine him. What is the name for that? What is the name that they say, Anthropology? No. Anthropology is the word. I forgot. This idea is pantheistic, and it may also be styled atheistic. Reason, not spiritualized, has a tendency to create such a doubt, but one who has a wish to enjoy spiritual love must give it up as misleading. The eternal rasa of Krishna exists spiritually in Chit Jagat. To us who are in neither world, there is a screen which intervenes between our eyes and the great spiritual scene of Krishna Lila. When by the grace of Krishna that screen is drawn up, we have the privilege to see it, and again, when it pleases the Almighty to drop the screen, the great Vrindavan Lila disappears. Taste the subject, and your conviction will be the same as mine, brethren. Do not give up such an important subject without due and liberal examination. Next, the Thakura addresses the controversial idea of transmigration in discussing the fourth point. The soul is his Vibhinamsha, or separated part. He wastes little time in dispensing with opposition to this important idea, which is central to understanding the eternal nature of the soul. Again, back to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's work. It must be understood that Mahaprabhu believed in the very liberal theory of transmigration of the soul. Certain readers may reject the idea on the ground that certain forms of faith do not support that theory. It is not liberal to reject a theory because it is in antagonism with the dogmas of certain sectarian creeds. Indeed, it is a matter which reason cannot dare to meddle with. Candidly examining, we do not see any strong reason to disbelieve the theory of transmigration. On the other hand, our unprejudiced mind is inclined to stand for it. The belief that the human soul has only one trial in life is evidently illiberal, unjust, and contrary to the belief that God is all good. Yes, that's a fact. How can Muslims and Christians and whoever else think that there's only one chance? You're born, let's say, in a ghetto in America as a black man, and there's shooting guns everywhere around you in this, and that's your only chance, really? You start from that point? And what about the person who's raised as a nice Christian in a family? How can they not see that? And then, let's say you commit a certain amount of sins, but you go to hell for eternity. What kind of God is this? Where's the morality behind that? When our spiritual sentiment supports the theory in the Vedas, the receptacles of inspiration have taught us the fact of continual existence of the soul in different stages of creation. We cannot but give up the idea of disbelieving in the theory of transmigration of the soul. However educated and scientific a man may be, he is always liable to a creeping error. That which holds good regarding a man holds good also regarding a nation or a sect. So he's saying, it doesn't matter how educated you are or scientific, you will commit some mistakes. And because states and nations are composed of men, then, it's the same thing, a sect. In his discussion of the soul, the Thakura also addresses the famous conundrum concerning the chronology of the living entity's creation and captivation by the material world. He quickly disposes with the matter, saying, please avoid the misleading question, when were these jivas created and enthralled? Like in prison, right? The Mayic time has no existence in spiritual history because it has its commencement after the enthrallment of jivas and matter, and you cannot therefore employ Mayic chronology in matters like these. Jai, that's actually, that's a conclusion I had come to when I was thinking, because people say, when did the jiva fall? But time began at the beginning of this current Brahma, right? This current creation. Mahavishnu set up the whole working of the Mahatattva with time to move. So this is time. So prior to that, time was withheld. It did not exist. And then you're starting to think then when? Well, it's before the beginning of time. So then how you see it fails. Oh, but before beginning of time, then we go back a little bit. No, that's also calculating time. It does not exist. You cannot, it breaks. Your idea of time breaks at that point, so you cannot. So I'm happy to see that, the Bhaktivinoda Thakur is instructing us like that. In discussing the fifth point, certain souls are engrossed by prakriti or illusory energy. The Thakur shatters the theory that there is anything enjoyable in the material world, and he uses the analogy of the prison house to clarify matters. In fact, Maya is in charge of God's house of correction. Those jivas who, in abusing their free will, forget that they were eternal servants of the deity, and though of enjoying for themselves, were grasped by Maya for their penal servitude and correction. The fallen souls travel from body to body with their linga deha, subtle body, doing karma or vikarma. That's it, going up and down, up and down, up and down. And in the fifth canto, the last chapter describing the hellish planets, it says the jivas all went to innumerable hellish planets. So we all went to hell. Rising up to the heavens and again coming down at the exhaustion of their virtues, going down to hell and after suffering punishment again rising up to the platform of work. Thus the state of the fallen soul is deplorable in the extreme. There they enjoy and suffer massacre and murder and go on in this state, sometimes smiling as princes and sometimes ruining as sufferers. The world is therefore a prison or a house of correction and not a place for enjoyment, as some people assert. In discussing the 6 points, certain souls are released from the grasp of Prakriti. The Thakur explains how this is only possible by meeting an elevated Vaishnava and acquiring Shraddha, or faith in the process of bhakti, devotion to the Godhead Krishna. When a man comes in contact with a Vaishnava whose heart has been melted by Hari Bhakti Rasa, it is then that he loves to abide the sweet principle of bhakti, by following in his holy footsteps. By constant study of Krishna Bhakti, he slowly washes off his Mayic condition and in the end obtaining his real nature. He enjoys the sweetness unalloyed rasa, which is the ultimatum of the soul. Satsanga, or the company of the spiritual people, is the only means to obtain the ultimate objective of men. Bhakti is a principle which comes from the soul to soul, and like electricity or magnetism in gross matter, it conducts itself from one congenial soul to another. There's so much study to be made about that. We need to understand how bhakti is transferred. Actually, bhakti creates bhakti. Of course, this is a big topic, but the point here is that it's not through jnana or karma that we get bhakti. Actually, it's not even through pious activity. And that's hard to comprehend, that bhakti is causeless. It's not through any of the things from the modes that we get bhakti. So sadhana bhakti can lead though to pure devotional service. So bhakti causes bhakti like that. Anyway, I've been pondering a lot about this subject matter recently, and I've been studying about it, and it's something quite fascinating. In discussing the 7 points, all spiritual and material phenomena are Achintya Beda Beda Prakash of Hari. The Almighty Yeah, spiritual and material. You see, everything is achintya. It's not that matter can be understood too. No, material energy is also achintya. A very simple thing like how the nails are growing, the hair growing, how a cow is giving milk when she eats only dry grass, right? The Thakura explains that to understand the simultaneous distinction and non-distinction of the jiva and God is no easy matter, but that the theories of Sankaracharya are erroneous. Some of Thakura Bhaktivinoda's analysis is hard to grasp, but when carefully studied, it shows itself to be a brilliant, sutra-like defeat of the basic principles of Mayavad, theory of the one Supreme Soul deluding himself that he is many individual souls. Metaphysical discussions are perfectly useless. The Vedas go sometimes to establish that Jiva is distinct from the deity, and sometimes that Jiva is the same as the deity. In fact, the Vedas always tell the truth. Jiva is simultaneously distinct from and identical with God. Okay, this is another very important point. You see, Mayavad are actually discrediting the Vedas because it's very clear. Many places it says that the Jiva is different from the Paramatma or from Brahman. Okay, and yes, in many places it also says that they are one. So if you just say that they are one, you're discrediting the other portion of the Vedas. You're just removing the authority of the Vedas. It's an oxymoron. You quote the Vedas because you accept that they are authoritative, but the other portion of the Vedas you reject it. But a Vaishnava doesn't kick away one side of the Vedas. He accepts everything, but he explains it. He explains why we are one and why we're separate also. This is not understood by the rationalists. Hence, it must be said that in exercise of his powers, beyond human comprehension, God is distinct from Jiva and the world, and again, identical with them at all times. The Vedanta teaches us the Shakti Parinamvat, doctrine of modification of God's energies, and not the erroneous Vivartavat of Sankaracharya. Shankar, in order to avoid Brahma Parinam, transformation of the Godhead into the world, establishes that Vyas teaches us Vivarvatavat, which is this, that God undergoes no change whatever, but it is Maya which covers a part of the deity, just as a pot encloses a part of the firmament, creates the world, or that God is reflected on avidya or ignorance. Okay, this is all, very... While in the fact nothing else than God has yet come to existence. These are worthless and abstruse arguments. It is plain that the Vedanta teaches us that God is unchangeable and is never subject to modification. His power alone creates jiva and the material world by its own parinam, modification. The example is in the action of the alchemist's stone, the power of which comes in the form of gold, while the stone remains unchanged. Thus, Chik Shakti, spiritual potency, goes in the form of Chit Jagat, spiritual universe, with all its particularities of eternal rasa, and Jiva Shakti goes in the form of innumerable jivas, some staying in Vaikuntha as prashadas or angels, and others moving in this world in various shapes and forms and under very different circumstances. This is still Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I believe, right? This is because using angels, the term angel and all, he was trying to preach to the Westerners, right? Maya Shakti, illusory potency, creates numerous worlds for the habitations and entertainments of the fallen souls. Vivardavat is no doubt an error and is quite opposed to the teachings of the Vedas. Now, Shakti Parinamvat alone is true and supports the fact that spiritual love is eternal. If Vivartavat were true, the natural consequence would be to declare spiritual love to be a temporary principle. In discussing the 8th point of the doctrine of Lord Chaitanya, Bhakti is the only means of attaining the final object of spiritual existence, the Thakura immediately discusses deity, Srimurti worship, because it is this feature of the science of Bhakti, worshipping God in a personal, apparently material feature, which is essential to the execution of Bhakti. But this process, so important for one's advancement and development of real attachment to God, also arouses fear in those who mistake it for idolatry. Yeah, we are so-called idolaters for all those Muslims and Christians, Recognizing the fears and irrationality of sectarian thinkers with respect to this topic, he brings into play all of his considerable logic, charm, wit, and deep realization of the various philosophies and religions of the world in stating his case. Anyone who wishes to place this controversial topic before a Western audience would do well to study the Thakura's presentation. For with his background of study of the Bible, the Quran, and the thoughts of the Western and Eastern philosophers, he was more than prepared for all forms of doubt, skepticism, or suspicion. So I believe this is a very good excerpt that we should study in order to speak about deity worship when preaching in Western countries. There are some who start at the theory of worshipping Srimurti. Oh, they say, it is idolatry to worship Srimurti. Srimurti is an idol framed by an artist and introduced by no other than Beelzebub himself. Beelzebub is, I think, a demon, right? Or like Satan. Worshipping such an object would rouse the jealousy of God and limit his omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. We would tell them, brethren, candidly understand the question and do not allow yourself to be misled by sectarian dogmas. God is not jealous, as he is without a second. Beelzebub, or Satan, is no other than an object of imagination or the subject of an allegory. Oh. Okay. So I was thinking about that, who is that Satan? Like in Vedic literature, do we have such a kind of fallen angel or whatever that, but here the Bhaktivinoda Thakur said this is an allegory. So Satan as a person does not exist. It's basically an allegory to represent, an agent of Maya, we could say, or Maya herself. An allegorical or imaginary being should not be allowed to act an obstacle to bhakti. Pretty good. Those who believe God to be impersonal simply identify him with some power or attribute in nature, though in fact he is above nature, her laws and rules. His holy wish is law, and it would be sacrilege to confine his unlimited excellence by identifying him with such attributes as omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. Attributes which may exist in created objects such as time, space, etc. His excellence consists in having in him mutually contradicting powers and attributes ruled by his supernatural self. That's very good. His excellence consists in having in him mutually contradicting powers. That's where the all powerful Lord can be, without accepting that Krishna can be small and big at the same time, go up and down at the same time, be impersonal and personal at the same time. Without accepting that, you are limiting God. That's the thing, Not that by saying, oh, you say he's a person or he can be in the form of the Murti, deity, you're limiting him. No. To be God, he would have to be both personal and impersonal. You cannot just eradicate one of his feature and say he's God. Then you are limiting him, you see. So that's a very good point. His excellence consists. Prabhupada wrote that somewhere also in some purport. Forgot when. So his excellence consists in having in him mutually contradicting powers and attributes ruled by his supernatural self. He is identical with his all-beautiful person, having such powers as omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, the like of which cannot be found elsewhere. His holy and perfect person exists eternally in the spiritual world, and at the same time existing in every created object and place in all its fullness. That's it. If you say God is not here fully, then you're limiting him. But the Christian and Muslim idea is that he's somewhere in his castle and he cannot come here, He cannot be here at the same time because he's there. That's material idea. This idea excels all other ideas of the deity. Excels all other ideas of the deity. Mahaprabhu rejects idolatry as well, but considers Shrimurti worship to be the only unexceptionable means of spiritual culture. It has been shown that God is personal and all-beautiful. Sages like Vyas and others have seen that beauty in their soul's eyes. They have left us descriptions. Of course, word carries grossness of matter, but truth still is perceivable in those descriptions. That's nice too, because all books are written by men and this and that. Okay, no doubt words carry some grossness of matter, but still it doesn't mean that the truth that is found in them immediately becomes obsolete. According to those descriptions, one delineates as Shrimurti and sees the great God of our heart there with intense pleasure. Brethren, is that wrong or sinful? That's it. The form of God is authorized by the Mahajan. We're not inventing. Those who say that God has no form, either material or spiritual, and again imagine a false form for worship, are certainly idolatrous. But those who see the spiritual form of the deity in their soul's eyes carry that impression as far as possible to the mind and then frame an emblem for the satisfaction of the material eye for continual study of the higher feeling, are by no means idolatrous. Wow, this is so well put. Carry that impression as far as possible to the mind. We try to remember the deity as far as possible. We try to, almost mechanically remember the Lord and look at the Lord. Then frame an emblem for the satisfaction of the material eye for continual study of the higher feeling. We're trying to understand what it is to see Shrimurti, Krishna in the deity form. It's a training. Spiritual model of the image, and you are a pure theist. Idolatry and Shrimurti worship are two different things, but my brethren, you simply confound one with the other out of hastiness. Yeah, hastiness. This is all idolatry. To tell you the truth, Shrimurti worship is the only true worship of the deity, without which you cannot sufficiently cultivate your religious feelings. The world attracts you through your senses, and as long as you do not see God in the objects of your senses, you live in an awkward position which scarcely helps you in producing your spiritual elevation, in procuring your spiritual elevation. It's true, it's an awkward position. Just imagine we don't have Shrimurti. What will we be doing? A temple means what? All of a sudden. Household means what? Where do you offer prasad? So many things. Place a Shrimurti in your house. Think that God Almighty is the guardian of the house. The food that you take is His prasad, mercy. The flower and scents are also His prasad. The eye, the ear, the nose, the touch, and the tongue all have a spiritual culture. You do it with a holy heart, and God will know it and judge you by your sincerity. Satan and Beelzebub will have nothing to do with you in that matter. All sorts of worship are based on the principle of Shrimurti. Look into the history of religion, and you will come to this noble truth. Oh, really? The Semitic idea, Semitic means relating or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and certain, the family of languages. It's about studying the history of languages. The Semitic idea of a patriarchal God, both in the pre-Christian period of Judaism and post-Christian period of Christianity and Mohammedanism, is nothing but the limited idea of Shrimurti. The monarchic idea of a Jove amongst the Greeks and of an Indra amongst the Aryan Karmakandis, adherents of the fruitive creed, is also a distant view of the same principle. The idea of a force and Jyotirmaya Brahma of the meditators and a formless energy of the Shaktas is also a very faint view of the Shrimurti. In fact, the principle of Shrimurti is the truth itself differently exhibited in different people according to their different phases of thought. Even Jaimini and Comte, who are not prepared to accept a creating God have prescribed certain phases of the Srimurti simply because they have been impelled by some inward action from the soul. So even those who are, just like at one point Srila Prabhupada met a Mayavad, there was a Pandal program in India, and the Mayavad spoke first about, God not having a form and all. And then Prabhupada spoke and said, although he says that God doesn't have a form, I know for certain that he worships Radha Krishna in secret. And then the Mayavads kind of have a smirk, a smile, Prabhupada knew that he had Radha Krishna deity. So even Mayavadis, they cannot do, not do without. Just like, because they say worship of the deity is a means to the end, it's like for neophytes like that. But still, why they have to worship it? Even in their temples, Arya Samaj, they have Radha Krishna deity many times, or some of these other so-called Vaishnavas, they must worship Radha Krishna. Somehow or other, this is the soul, you're attracted. Then again, we meet with people who have adopted the cross, the Shalagram Shila, the Lingam, and such like emblems as indicators of the inward idea of Srimurti. Furthermore, if the divine compassion, love, and justice could be portrayed by the pencil and expressed by the chisel, why should not the personal beauty of the deity, embracing all other attributes, be portrayed in poetry or in picture or expressed by the chisel for the benefit of man? Oh, that's also very deep. If compassion, love, justice could be portrayed by the pencil and expressed by the chisel, why should not the personal beauty? Wow. This has to do with Krishna not being different in his attributes, Chiseling beauty, chiseling love, justice, You chisel love, justice, and it comes in the form of Krishna. Of course, the embodiment of all his qualities. Be portrayed in poetry and picture expressed by the chisel for the benefit of man. If words could impress thoughts, the watch could indicate time, and sign could tell us a history, why should not the picture or figure bring associations of higher thoughts and feelings with regard to the transcendental beauty of the divine personage? Srimurti worshippers are divided into two classes, the ideal and the physical. Those of the physical school are entitled from their circumstances of life and state of the mind to establish temple institutions. Those who are, by circumstances and position, entitled to worship the Srimurti in mind have, with due deference to the temple institutions, a tendency to worship usually by Shravana, hearing, and Kirtan. And the church is universal and independent of caste and color. So this is the Mahabhagavata basically. Mahaprabhu prefers this latter class and shews their worship in his Shikshashtaka, printed as an appendix to this book. Worship then without intermission with a feeling of resignation, and in a very short time you will be blessed with prema. In discussing the concluding and ninth point, Prem in God is the final object of spiritual existence, the Thakura details the various bhavas, symptoms of ecstasy, and introduces prema, ecstatic love, in the form of the 5 eternal rasas, relationships, with Krishna as the highest attainment of the soul. He cautions his reader not to confound material rasa with spiritual rasa. So now we have an excerpt of the 9th point. Remember, this is he presented that for Western people, right? This is what he sent. I believe this is what Chaitanya's precept, right? His teachings and precept. I think that's the book that was sent, and we had one in McGill University, We have a perverted picture of this noble rasa in human life. As human life is the thraldom of Maya, is but a perverted reflection of the spiritual life. When the soul alone acts towards its proper object, the spiritual hero, Krishna, the rasa is pure. When the mind and the senses act upon a wrong object, rasa is degraded and becomes hateable. The perverted rasa gives clue to the idea of the noble spiritual rasa to men in general. Hence, these arguments and descriptions have been attempted in words which correspond with words directly meaning the features of the perverted rasa. So Krishna's last Leela. We ask our readers to take care to make a nice distinction between spirit and gross matter, otherwise a fall is inevitable. The Thakura then summarizes his entire message in the space of a paragraph and gives some final words of advice to his readers. To summarize, man in his present state has three different principles in him. One, stool, principle of or gross matter composing his body. Two, the linga principle or sublimated matter appearing in the form of mind, attention, rationality, and perverted ego, by which one confounds oneself with the material world. This state has been caused by the influence of Maya, or the illusory energy, with the object of correcting the soul in his wrong intention to enjoy, in consequence of forgetfulness of his nature as God's servant. I'm very happy to be Srila Prabhupada's disciple. I would have a hard time to read all of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's book. The English, the way, Man, in fact, is solely independent of Maya and her connection. The only way to get rid of the present difficulty is the influence of pure bhakti imbibed from a true bhakta. Yes. What is that? Sagunan samatitya brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So, mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Sagunan samatitya brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Bhakti as a means elevates the man up to the all-beautiful Krishna, and again as an end maintains him with eternal Krishna Prem. While located in a Mayic world, man must live peacefully with the object of cultivating the spirit. In his society he must lead a pure life, avoid sins, and do as much good as he can to his brother men. He must be himself humble, bearing difficulties of life with heroism, must not brag of any goodness or grandeur he has, and must treat everyone with the respect due to him. Marriage with a view to peaceful and virtuous life, and with a view to procreate servants of the Lord, is a good institution for a Vaishnava. Spiritual cultivation is the main object of life. Do everything that helps it and abstain from doing anything which thwarts the cultivation of the spirit. Have a strong faith that Krishna alone protects you and none else. Admit him as your only guardian. Do everything which you know that Krishna wishes you to do, and never think that you do a thing independent of the holy wish of Krishna. Do all that you do with humility. Always remember that you are a sojourner in this world, means like a traveler, someone who stays only a night or two. And you must be prepared for your own home. Do your duties and cultivate bhakti as a means to obtain the great end of life, Krishna Priti. Employ your body, mind, and spirit in the service of the deity. In all your actions, worship your great Lord. In his final advice, it is significant that the Thakura mentions the principle of humility twice and gives special emphasis to the idea of seeing oneself always under the exclusion, protection, and shelter of Krishna. This paragraph is perfect counsel for all who would progress in the spiritual line. Finally, the Thakura expressed his own humility and eagerness to assist any sincere soul by making the offer of further instruction to those who are interested. So we can see that today's classes were mainly reading from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's work. We're not really much speaking about his activities anymore, right? So it's a bit heavier on the mind, on the intelligence to read so much from his work, but let's bear with me. We'll make the session shorter today. Noble readers, pardon us for intruding on you with these pages. As servants of Chaitanya, it was our duty to propagate his supreme teachings, and in doing a duty we are entitled to pardon for any trouble we have given you. We are natives of Bengal, and in couching our words in a foreign language, we might have been liable to mistakes for which you will please forgive us. Srila Prabhupada also similarly in the CC, In conclusion, we beg to say that we should be glad to reply to any questions which our brethren would like to address us on these important subjects. We feel great interest in trying to help our friends to seek in the way to spiritual love. How long is that? Okay. The Thakura thus made his historic appeal to the West and correctly foresaw the future expansion of Lord Chaitanya's movement. The understanding which the Thakura had of the Western intellectuals of his time was remarkable. In his preaching, he anticipated many of their arguments and doubts and resolved them with powerful logic, persuasive conviction, and scriptural knowledge. This small but powerful essay was the beginning of a spiritual revolution which would spread throughout the world in the near future. By the pure desire of the Thakura, his great son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and his son's great disciples, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, were sent by Krishna to assist in the fulfillment of his great aspiration. In that same year of 1896, the Thakura also published 2 works which explain the 5 main elements of the philosophy of Ramanujacharya at length, on which the author he called Shri Ramanuja Upadesha, and the author by Shri Pillai Lokacharya, called Artha Panchakara. The Thakura's Shri Gauranga Lila Smaranamangala Stotram, containing the Life and Precepts essay, was favorably reviewed by a number of scholars. One review appeared in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society of London with the following remarks. So this is a review of the we've just read, basically. Well, we haven't read it full, but under the title of Shri Gauranga Lila Smarana Mangal Stotram, the well-known Vaishnava Shri Kedarnath Bhaktivinod, MRAS, has published a poem in Sanskrit on the life and teachings of Chaitanya. It is accompanied by a commentary, also in Sanskrit, in which the subject further elucidated is preceded by an introduction of 63 pages in English, in which the doctrines taught by Chaitanya are set out in somewhat full detail. This position, and more especially as against Shankar and the Advaita Vedantis, is explained at length. The little volume will add to our knowledge of this remarkable reformer, and we press our thanks to Bhaktivinod for giving it to us in English and Sanskrit, rather than in Bengali, in which language it must necessarily have remained a closed book to European students of the religious life in India. Another Western scholar named R.W. Fraser, who had spent time in Madras, wrote this appreciation. 500 years have passed away since the time Chaitanya spread of faith in the saving grace of Krishna throughout the land. Nevertheless, down to the present day, the same spirit that inspired Chaitanya continues still to dwell among his followers. In an interesting account of the life and precept of Chaitanya lately published by his devout and aged follower, Shri Kedarnath Bhaktivinod, it can be read how this spirit preserves its vitality undiminished amid the changes that are sweeping over the land. This exponent of the hopes of the present followers of the teachings of Chaitanya declares his firm faith that from a devoted love to Krishna, a love like that of a girl for a loved one, shown by constant repetition of his name, by ecstatic raptures, singing, calm contemplation and fervor, a movement will yet take place to draw to the future church of the world all classes of men, without distinction of caste or clan, to the highest cultivation of the spirit. This church, it appears, will extend all over the world and take the place of all sectarian churches which exclude outsiders from the precincts of the mosque, church, and temple. Well, that's a pretty good appreciation from a Western scholar. The spirit that is to animate this new church is to be founded on the principle that spiritual cultivation is the main object of life. Do everything that keeps it and abstain from doing anything which thwarts the cultivation of spirit. A devoted love of Krishna is to be the guiding light, as preached by Chaitanya. Have a strong faith that Krishna alone protects you and none else. Admit him as your only guardian. Do everything which you know Krishna wishes you to do, and never think that you do a thing independent of the holy wish of Krishna. Do all that you do with humility. Always remember that you are a sojourner in the world and you must be prepared for your own home. So he quoted that from the excerpt from the book. From a Literary History of India, pp. 349 and 51, page 349-51. Preaching and publishing until the last. Okay, we'll keep that for tomorrow. Today's session was heavy philosophically. Let me see. So Hare Krishna, everyone who has joined. Hare Krishna, Sami Prabhu, Kamya Mataji, Hare Krishna, Rudrashk, Sita Mataji. So Sita Mataji, every time I come to listen to these readings, it is so powerful. Very nice to learn about our acharyas. Thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much. Manu Prabhu, thank you for joining. Anandini Mataji, thank you very much for joining. Hare Krishna, yes, this is, Prabhu is saying this is a fact. So thank you for reading this wonderful book, thank you. His reading of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's biography, this portion especially established without a doubt the supremacy of pure bhakti process and principles. Yeah, I think to preach in the West, we should study this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and precept. That's how we're going to find this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and precepts, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, PDF. I'm pretty sure you can find it and you can read the whole. Okay, we'll stop here. We are at page 135. And as we said, we will be reading until... where? No, excerpts. The excerpts we won't read. Appendices also we won't read. This is his prediction. We will stop at his predictions tomorrow. So 135 to 158. It's doable. It's only 23 pages. Tomorrow we'll be able to do it. We came to 135 today. We started... is it? Yeah. We started at 112 today. So we did 22 pages. Okay. All right. Tomorrow we'll finish that. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining each session. It's been a bit hard for me to do these sessions every single day. My wife has helped a lot, taking care fully of the children by herself in the evening. Tomorrow's the last day. Thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhischa kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Ananta Kuti Vaishnava ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Nitai Go Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you. Hare Krishna.